Hello, this is John Martin, and thanks for pressing the play button and committing to spend a little bit of time with me as I run through around 10 slides on this slide deck. Over the course of these slides, hopefully we'll get a better understanding of what an IT or digital department actually does. And the motivation for me recording this is actually twofold. Firstly, over the 30 or so years of my experience in and around the IT department, it's amazing how much time I've spent on, I guess you'd call it process improvement, looking at how the processes within the IT department work and trying to find a better way of doing things. And that's happened fairly recently, so I had an opportunity to dust off many of the slides you're about to see and use them on a real live consultancy assignment. And secondly, which is slightly more amusing, I'm sure you perhaps get it yourself, you meet new people or you go to a family gathering and you haven't seen someone for a while and they say, well, what do you do? And the sort of usual response is, well, I work in the IT department. And they then say, I've got a computer problem. Can you come and have a look and fix it for me? And when I say, well, that's not really what I do, they say, well, I thought you worked in IT. So hopefully over the next few slides, you'll get a better understanding of what really happens in the IT department. So that said, let's get started. I hinted in the introduction that I get involved in process improvement, and most of the slides actually treat the IT department as a process. And on the screen, it's the highest level really where the IT department is the box in the middle. It's like a black box. We don't know what happens inside it, and that's what the rest of the slides that we're going to cover will expand upon. But at a high level, we've basically got demand on the service. We've got some form of input. We do something with that, and then hopefully we get outputs, which in the case of the IT department are our core IT systems are working, our customers are happy or as happy as they can be, and the systems and services that we provide are fit for purpose to the wider organisation that we're trying to support. So for the next few slides, we're going to drill down into that box in the middle, lift the bonnet and find out what happens in the IT digital operations department. Let's go there now. So drilling down, this diagram expands upon the detail within the box and really shows two things. Firstly, the different colours reflect the different types of resources that work together in order to provide the service. The white boxes tend to be the core IT department employees who work there on a daily basis, supported by the others. IT is one of those services where commonly aspects of it are outsourced, so we end up with what we tend to refer to as service partners, and combined with the permanent employees, we try and offer a sort of a one team approach to our end customers. They don't really know the difference between who's working for who, but it's just a seamless service. And then the nature of IT, because there's so many different systems and devices that we might use, there's a whole host of other solution providers that we interact with on a daily basis in order to get the job done. The second thing this diagram shows is the 5 very high level activities that happen within an IT department. So firstly, as the work comes in, we need to have processes to be able to give that work to our service partners. It may be a slightly different process to give them to our other solution providers, and there's other work we do ourselves. On the right hand side of the diagram, there's this idea that as we do work, before we actually give it back to the customer or complete it, we need to make sure that what we've done is fit for purpose. So there's a service assurance and support function. And finally, an umbrella across the whole lot of that is the 5th function, which is that of strategy, making sure that we're continually reviewing what we're doing, improving what we do, and making sure that we're meeting the needs of our internal and external customers. We'll consider the inputs in a bit more detail in a minute. Let's drill down to the next level of detail. We've added quite a bit of detail to this next level. The first thing you might notice is that there's a dotted line a little way down the box. And this is really to distinguish the two very broad types of activity the IT department gets involved in. Below the line, there's what we tend to call service delivery, so the business as usual, and often that involves having a service desk that employees, members of the organisation can contact the IT department to say this is broken and needs fixing, which is an incident, or make standard forms of requests that we can then deal with to help them use the IT systems correctly. One of the big bodies of knowledge that exists to help control and define what those processes are is somewhat called ITIL, or the IT Infrastructure Library. I've included the logo for that on the diagram. Above the dotted line is probably the majority of work that happens in the IT department. Sometimes that goes unseen or unknown from those outside the department, and that's the way we have to handle the whole host of requests, changes and project delivery work that we get involved in on a daily basis. We'll be expanding upon the green boxes over the coming slides, but at a high level, everything else that comes in has some sort of mechanism for getting the work logged so we understand what's needed, and managing the pipeline or backlog of activity through a number of delivery cycles, having oversight of that whole portfolio of work and making sure that we've got the appropriate governance in place to track what's happening, when it's happening and when it needs to be completed by. A couple of other things worth pointing out in the blue boxes. We've mentioned the service desk already, but as we have a whole host of sort of suppliers involved, we tend to spend a fair amount of time ensuring that they understand what we need them to do and they have the commercial arrangement to give us a quote. And then finally, as we hand stuff that we've done back into service, there's an important change control process which exists so that we make sure that we don't fix one problem and cause 10 others, so that there's actually some sort of control and assurance on how we release things back into service. On these slides, we've had the term everything else as one of the inputs. I guess that begs the question, so what is everything else? And the next couple of slides will hopefully expand upon that. If you want to build a new building, use an architect, and the role of the architect is to design the thing that you want to build, but also understand how all the different materials and components that go into constructing the building will fit together in a seamless way so it looks beautiful and is functionally fit for purpose. The IT department is no different. It has architects that do very similar things, and here TOGAF, is the Open Group Architecture Framework, has this domain model diagram which helps understand and explain the different sorts of things that we get involved in an IT department. In order to provide a working IT solution, we need to understand who the customer is, what their needs are, how they need to function, both internal customers and our external paying customers. Invariably, it will involve some sort of process. For example, applying for a bank loan, you've got to capture certain bits of data inside in that process. So we need applications and systems that will actually hold that data, store that data, process that data, and that needs to be fit for purpose. And the building blocks that go into that need to join together so that it's done as efficiently and effectively as possible. Underneath all of that is the actual infrastructure, the devices, the computers, the telephones, the networking, and especially in these modern times, the security around making sure that the data that we're capturing protects the privacy of the end users, and also that that's fit for purpose in the sense of it gives the organisation information and data and business intelligence so that it can be improved over time. Allied to these sort of general domains is the idea on the right hand side that there's like an architecture for each one of those. So there's some sort of documentation within the organisation that gets maintained so that we know what we've got and how we want to improve it. And the red words there, a number of roadmaps, give this idea that what we've got today isn't going to stay that way for very long. There's change is constant, and we need over time to understand how it needs to evolve to meet the ever-changing business needs. So I guess this begs the question, how does the IT department understand and manage this demand in a constantly changing world? I warn you, the next slide is a bit busy, but bear with me. But hopefully your eyes have been drawn to the pink box in the middle, as that's really what this trigger is really all about. We want to try and understand the demand coming in and how the IT department manages the delivery of that demand. I won't be spending too much time on this slide, but I just want to highlight a few key bits. So the top left hand side, there's a number of yellow boxes which really reflect the external factors to the IT department. We don't necessarily have direct control over these, but we need to monitor what's happening. And that is a combination of strategic change in the wider organisation, making sure that we're aligned with what happens strategically. That is often influenced by what's happening with legislation in different parts of the business and regulation, and the needs of the end users, the customers, and what they're demanding. At the top, there's a blue sky cloud, and that's really reflecting that technology doesn't change, doesn't stay still. There's a often need for research and development, innovation, and finding new ways of doing the old things so we can do them better, quicker, using new things. And then finally, there's the blue boxes, which are familiar from the previous slides, really, which is the internal existing technology that we're using and understanding the needs of those organisations and partners. Some of the triggers are highlighted on this slide in the sort of blue text, and the red text is hopefully familiar from the previous slide where we're talking about where the different roadmaps come from. And finally, top right hand corner, we've got this idea of strategy. One of the umbrella activities that we mentioned earlier on was the idea of strategy, and IT departments need a strategy for A, how they're going to work and develop, and B, how that IT department is going to serve the needs of the wider organisation. So let's drill down into the process that happens on demand and delivery management. This diagram is really the bit of the diagram we've covered before above the dotted line, in that it covers the key activities or key stages in the process of how demand is managed and delivered. And in the middle, I guess it's a nirvana, and in all the organisations I've worked with over my career, no single organisation has managed to have a single tool and workflow that manages this. Some have come fairly close, but quite often there's a number of sort of parallel processes running in order to get this done. We'll expand upon it in a minute, but essentially the things that we need to consider are, as work comes in, how do we triage it, prioritise it so we can then deliver it, review that what we've delivered gets done, with oversight above it to make sure that we're directing it in the right way, doing the right things in the right order. And probably most importantly in these chimes is ensuring that we have a retrospective, ensure that we check what we're doing. Are we doing the best we can do? Can we learn from it? Can we make improvements? Can we do what we're doing better? So this slide will build up in a bit more detail what we've just covered. That's the idea that it's actually an end-to-end process with a start and a stop. As I mentioned before, the triage process really is a means of logging the work so we know that it's needed, doing some sort of high-level assessment and assigning some work to it. And part of that process is really, is this work we should be doing? Should we be doing it now? And if it isn't, it should get rejected and possibly go into a backlog for review later. If it is something we should be doing now, we need to prioritise when it happens, understand a little bit more about what the scope is, and schedule it into one of many different delivery cycles. We'll expand upon the delivery cycle in a minute, but that's an iterative process where at key points things will get delivered. Once something is delivered, we can review it. Is it fit for purpose? Can it be completed? Or do we need to iterate more? Do we need to go back, do a bit more work, do the next stage of work? Does that need to be prioritised? So that's sort of the basic end-to-end process. As I mentioned before, in parallel to that, there's oversight from looking after the portfolio of work and making sure that as work happens, we're picking up what's working well, what isn't working so well, and doing things to improve it to make sure that everything gets better. So let's drill down on what deliver it actually means. Essentially, the delivery process isn't one size fits all. As you can see, there's some examples on the screen of the different types of delivery that might happen, but these aren't an exhaustive list. So I'm going to quickly run through what is on the screen. Some projects are really simple. They're really just activities or tasks that we can just assign an individual resource to it and the job gets done. We mentioned on the earlier slides there's this idea of a service desk where members of the organisation and sometimes external customers log complaints, log issues with how the systems are working. Some of those systems might actually be requests that can't be solved quite easily, and they end up needing an actual piece of work to deliver it. That's really the service delivery option on here. And then there's more traditional projects which can take a number of different forms. If you've watched any of my project management videos, you'll know I like to have a generic life cycle for managing the work, of starting it, planning it, doing it and closing it. But within that, there's a number of different types of project. There's probably traditional project delivery, which could be we just need a project manager or someone in the IT department to coordinate an external party for them to do the work. There's a whole range of different types of project delivery, whether it's agile projects or waterfall projects. And then occasionally there's some very complicated projects and programs that take sometimes more than a year to complete and change the way the IT department works. All of those have different sort of needs and requirements. Then there's the probably shorter pieces of work. We need a bit more analysis and discovery to get to the bottom of what the issue is, what the request's all about. And that includes things like user research, feasibility studies, writing business cases, and just understanding requirements in a bit more detail. And also, the nature of the IT department is that we involved with procurements and commercial agreements with a number of the solution providers, but they don't always stay the same. Sometimes we need to change systems. We need to make sure that what we've got is still fit for purpose. And to do that, we go out to the market with some form of tender, and we have to have a process for doing that. So the procurement project is completely different from the delivery project that would then implement what we've selected and chosen. Phew. Well, there you have it. Hopefully you're still with me, and having gone through those slides, you have a better understanding at a high level of the sorts of things that happen within an IT digital department. Don't forget to check out my other videos on my YouTube channel, which look at a whole range of activities around project management, enterprise architecture, and things like this around just general IT strategy. Thanks for watching. Take care until next time.